She was just 12 years old when it happened. One tweet. That's all it took for her entire life to change. Justin Bieber, the global icon she idolized, publicly praised Madison Beer's YouTube video, and overnight, she was no longer a fan. She was a phenomenon. The tweet sparked a media frenzy, caught the attention of major labels, and launched Madison into the spotlight with the kind of overnight fame most people only dream of. But behind the excitement, behind the viral moment, something more unsettling began to unfold. Because this wasn't just a discovery story, it was the start of a power dynamic that raised more questions than answers. How close did they really become? And why are so many fans still convinced their relationship wasn't what it seemed? Now, over a decade later, their story is being re-examined under a very different lens. From leaked blind items and cryptic Instagram posts to rumors of manipulation, industry secrets, and alleged grooming patterns that mirror Bieber's own past, the relationship between Justin and Madison is layered, emotional, and disturbing. This wasn't just mentorship. It was power, control, and a system designed to protect the famous, no matter the cost. And for Madison, who stepped into that system as a child, the consequences may have lasted far longer than anyone realized. What really happened between Justin Bieber and Madison Beer? Let's pull back the curtain and find out. It started with a phone call Madison Beer would never forget. Her best friend Nicole called in a frenzy. "Did you see Justin Bieber's tweet?" Madison, just 12 years old at the time, had no idea what she was about to discover. Moments later, she was standing outside a candy store, hysterically crying as she read it. Justin Bieber, her idol, her lock screen, the pop star whose birthday she knew by heart, had shared her YouTube cover with millions of followers. In an instant, her life shifted from ordinary to unimaginable. She wasn't just a fan anymore. She was the girl Justin Bieber picked out of the crowd. The tweet went viral. Madison's name exploded across social media. Talent scouts, record labels, and managers came calling. It was the kind of Cinderella moment the internet loves to romanticize. But beneath the surface, it came with a price. At just 12 years old, Madison was thrust into a world she barely understood, one where fame could be weaponized, where alliances formed behind closed doors, and where being chosen by a global star wasn't just about talent, it was about control. That one tweet became the start of a journey that would define her teenage years, but also expose her to the darker corners of the music industry. Because as the headlines celebrated a viral discovery, insiders whispered something else. Why had Justin taken such a strong interest in someone so young? What did that relationship look like when the cameras weren't around? And as Madison's career began to rise, so did the speculation. Was this mentorship, or was it the first chapter in a much more complicated story? What seemed like a dream come true moment would eventually raise the kind of questions no one wanted to answer. Questions about power, boundaries, and what really happens when fame finds a 12-year-old girl. Madison Beer's rise to fame felt like a fairy tale, but for anyone paying attention, the story sounded strangely familiar. She wasn't discovered through a record deal or industry showcase. It happened through YouTube, just like Justin Bieber. A simple cover video led to a life-changing moment, and within days she was signed to Island Records. Not only that, she was handed over to Scooter Braun, the same manager who shaped Justin's career from teenage heartthrob to global superstar. It felt like history repeating itself, but this time, Justin was the one holding the power. But Justin wasn't just a fan of Madison's talent, he became the public face of her discovery. He tweeted her music, championed her publicly, and suddenly positioned himself as her unofficial mentor. Yet beneath the mentorship label was something more complex. Justin had the influence to shape her career, build her audience, and decide how and when she was seen. She wasn't just being introduced to the music industry. She was stepping into Justin's inner circle, a place with its own unspoken hierarchy and quiet pressures. The dynamic was clear. He discovered her, and now she was in his world, and that world came with its own history. Justin had been through a similar cycle. Discovered young, mentored by older male power players like Usher and Diddy, and signed into systems that blur the lines between protection and possession. So when he brought Madison into that same structure, people began to question his motives. Was he paying it forward? Or was he repeating a pattern that had once been used on him? This wasn't just about launching a career. It was about legacy, influence, and the way the industry quietly recycles power from one generation to the next, with young stars caught in the middle. At first glance, it all looked innocent. Madison Beer and Justin Bieber being spotted together at hikes, cafes, and casual outings. Birthday celebrations, friendly photos, and public smiles painted a picture of two artists bonding over music. But the more the paparazzi captured, the more questions started to surface. Madison often insisted in interviews that they didn't spend much time together. Yet the images said otherwise. And in one clip, Justin abruptly walked away mid-hike, leaving Madison behind without so much as a glance. What should have been a sweet moment between mentor and protege instead looked cold, dismissive, maybe even calculated. Moments like these sparked conversations about emotional power. Who was really in control? While Justin publicly boosted Madison's career, privately his actions sometimes felt detached, even disrespectful. The hike wasn't an isolated incident. Fans have long noticed how he treated women in his life, slamming a car door in Hailey's face, refusing to acknowledge her in public, or simply letting her trail behind while paparazzi snapped away. That behavior wasn't just inconsiderate, it sent a message, a reminder that proximity to fame comes with conditions. And Madison, though young, may have started to feel that pressure long before she could even name it. These moments raise a deeper question. Was Madison truly part of Justin's circle, or was she just orbiting around his influence? The industry often sells the idea of chosen ones, those lucky enough to be mentored by a superstar. But being chosen can sometimes mean being controlled. Madison's appearances next to Justin weren't just about friendship or music, they were about image. And when a teenage girl is placed next to one of the world's biggest stars without clear boundaries, the line between support and subtle manipulation becomes harder to define. In 2017, a chilling blind item began circulating online, and it stopped fans in their tracks. It described a young woman being paid nearly $10,000 a week to stick by a pop star's side, manage his public image, and essentially act as his handler. She wasn't just there for moral support. She was a lifeline, placed there by a team with one mission: keep the star functioning, performing, and profitable. The internet lit up with speculation, and one name kept coming up over and over again: Madison Beer. The timing fit, the description matched. And suddenly, the story of a sweet discovery took on a much darker undertone. That same year, Justin Bieber's personal life was unraveling. Rumors of substance abuse were growing louder. His volatile relationship with Selena Gomez dominated the headlines. He was lashing out at paparazzi, walking off stage mid-concert, and canceling tours with little explanation. But amid the chaos, Madison's public statements painted a completely different picture. Justin's doing really well. He's happy. He's focused. She said all the right things, calm, reassuring, clean-cut. To fans, she was just being loyal. But to those familiar with how the industry works, her tone felt rehearsed, like a PR shield meant to keep the money machine moving. So was Madison Beer just a rising star trying to protect a friend? Or was she strategically positioned to manage his image during a time of crisis? The industry has a long history of using young, likable faces to soften the damage around spiraling celebrities. And Madison, barely out of childhood herself, may have been placed in a role she never signed up for. If the blind item was true, she wasn't just being groomed for stardom, she was being used to keep a fragile empire from collapsing. And if that's the case, the question isn't just about what she said, it's about who told her to say it. As Madison Beer's fame grew, so did the whispers, and they weren't innocent. Multiple blind items began flooding gossip forums, hinting at a relationship between her and Justin Bieber that was far more complicated than anyone realized. One particularly viral Reddit post claimed that the two were involved during 2014 and 2015, a time when Madison would have been just 15 years old and Justin already in his early 20s. The rumor was jarring, but what made it worse were the receipts. Studio photos from that era showed the pair looking unusually close, too close for comfort, fueling speculation that there was more going on behind the scenes than anyone was admitting publicly. But it didn't stop there. Another comment alleged that Justin had taken Madison on international trips, specifically to countries with lower legal age of consent laws. Japan was mentioned more than once, a country that, until very recently, had one of the lowest age of consent thresholds in the developed world. Fans began connecting dots, questioning whether these trips were coincidental or calculated. Why was a global pop star traveling with a teenage girl? Why were there so many blurry lines between mentorship and something that felt exploitative? For a while, these questions stayed buried in the corners of gossip forums. But as time passed and more blind items emerged, the public started paying closer attention. And suddenly, that innocent tweet from years ago, Justin shouting out a young girl's YouTube cover, looked a lot less magical and a lot more suspicious. What began as a fairy tale moment had twisted into a narrative about power, grooming, and silence. Because if even a fraction of these allegations were true, then Madison wasn't just another artist trying to make it in the industry. She was a teenager caught in the orbit of someone far older, far more powerful, and perhaps far more dangerous than anyone wanted to believe. The blind items may have been anonymous, but the implications were impossible to ignore. By the time Madison Beer was just 16 years old, she was already living alone in Los Angeles, a city that glamorizes freedom but rarely protects the vulnerable. She's openly said that her mother and younger brother moved back to New York when she turned 18. But even before that, Madison experienced long periods of near-total independence. She was attending high-profile industry events, working in studios late at night, and building a brand in one of the most cutthroat industries in the world. And she was doing all of it without the consistent presence of a parent or legal guardian. For a teenage girl, that wasn't freedom, it was exposure. The entertainment industry has always had a soft spot for the child star story, but what's often hidden beneath the surface is how deeply isolating and risky that lifestyle can be. Madison wasn't a Nepo baby. She didn't come from a famous last name or a protected legacy. She didn't have family connections pulling strings behind the scenes. She was a teenager with ambition, surrounded by grown adults who controlled the narrative, the money, and the access. And that kind of dynamic can be dangerous, especially when the people with the most power are the ones you've been taught to admire. One of those people was Justin Bieber. To the world, he was her mentor, the one who discovered her, promoted her, and opened doors. But behind closed doors, the power he held was undeniable. A single tweet could launch or tank her next project. One comment could shape her image overnight. And with that kind of influence hanging over her, it's hard not to wonder how much agency Madison really had. At 16, she may have lived in her own apartment. But in a city like LA, where reputation is currency and silence is survival, being alone doesn't always mean being free. In the beginning, Justin Bieber played the role of mentor flawlessly. He tweeted Madison Beer's YouTube covers, praised her voice, and helped spotlight her rising talent. For a while, it seemed like a supportive big brother relationship, one where a global superstar used his platform to uplift a young artist. But as the public attention grew, something shifted. In a bizarre Instagram post, Justin shared a photo of Madison and captioned it, "My friend Madison Beer has a bigger nose than me. Who agrees?" It came out of nowhere. It wasn't playful. It felt mean-spirited, and millions of followers were watching. For Madison, who had spent years navigating online hate and criticism about her appearance, the comment struck a painful chord. She tried to laugh it off publicly, but the damage was done. Being mocked by the very person who launched your career isn't just hurtful, it's humiliating. Especially when that person has the power to sway public opinion with a single sentence. Madison has spoken openly about how being perceived as too pretty made her a target. Instead of praise, she received scrutiny. Instead of admiration, she was often met with resentment. And when Justin made that comment, intentionally or not, he fed right into the very narrative that had haunted her for years. This wasn't just about a single joke, it was about emotional power and public image. Justin's post didn't just chip away at Madison's confidence, it broadcasted her insecurities to the world. And when someone that influential makes you the punchline, the ripple effect can be brutal. Fans question the nature of their relationship. Was he joking? Or was this a subtle way to put her in her place? For someone who claimed to care about Madison's well-being, Justin's actions painted a different picture. one where admiration blurred into ownership and support twisted into control. The rumors came fast, and they hit hard. As Justin Bieber's on-and-off relationship with Selena Gomez crumbled, a new name began appearing in the headlines: Madison Beer. Whispers turned into viral speculation that Madison, barely out of childhood, was the reason for the breakup. She was being painted as the other woman, the girl who came between Hollywood's golden couple. Suddenly, her career wasn't the focus anymore. Her character was. And for a teenager still finding her voice, that kind of public scrutiny can be devastating. Madison eventually broke her silence, emphatically denying the rumors with the now iconic quote, "Oh my God, no. Never. Not ever, ever, ever. He's like a big brother." But even with that statement, many couldn't help but see it as carefully measured damage control. Madison wasn't just defending herself. She was navigating a PR nightmare. Caught between two of the most talked about celebrities in the world, she had to walk a razor-thin line, clear her name without implicating Justin. She couldn't afford to alienate the person who launched her career, nor could she allow the media to destroy her credibility. It's the kind of balancing act that even seasoned publicists struggle with, yet Madison faced it alone, young, female, and under a microscope. And through it all, Justin said nothing. No public defense, no statement to ease the pressure off Madison, just silence. That silence spoke volumes. While Madison worked overtime to preserve her image and protect Justin's, he allowed the rumors to spiral unchecked. It's a pattern that repeated itself throughout her early years in the industry. Madison taking the fall, while the people around her stayed quiet. Her response wasn't just a denial, it was a survival tactic. Because in Hollywood, perception is everything. And for a girl already accused of being too close to power, every word had the weight of her future attached to it. As the years passed, the gossip only grew darker and more bizarre. Blind items began to shift away from Madison alone and zoom in on the web surrounding Justin Bieber, including his ties to Selena Gomez and the now controversial Hillsong Church. These weren't just vague rumors, they were detailed, shocking accounts of alleged emotional abuse, cult-like indoctrination, and extreme religious manipulation. One particularly disturbing blind item claimed that Justin told a partner to hold a Bible during intimacy, suggesting that he believed she was unclean. These stories sounded surreal, but they didn't emerge in a vacuum. The timelines, the behaviors, the public meltdowns, they all started to align with what fans had been witnessing for years. Other blind items painted a picture of an unbalanced relationship structure, one where Justin was allegedly permitted to sleep with other women, while his partner was expected to remain monogamous, even celibate. The rumors described a twisted dynamic of dominance disguised as devotion. And while many assumed these stories referred solely to Selena Gomez or Hailey Bieber, it raised an unsettling question. Was Madison Beer exposed to this same environment? She had been brought into Justin's inner circle at just 12 years old, during a time when he was closely tied to Hillsong and surrounded by handlers, religious leaders, and powerful men accused of enabling his worst behavior. Madison never spoke directly about these rumors. But her proximity to Justin during those critical years places her in the orbit of something much larger and potentially more dangerous than anyone initially realized. If even a fraction of the blind items about Justin's religious and romantic behavior are true, then it's fair to ask whether Madison's mentorship experience was as safe and supportive as it appeared. The line between spiritual guidance and psychological control is razor thin, especially for young, impressionable artists. And when you look at how Selena, Hailey, and others have allegedly been affected, Madison's silence may not be a coincidence. It may be survival. Justin Bieber gave Madison Beer what millions of aspiring artists dream of: instant fame. One tweet launched her career, and his name became the golden ticket behind hers. But when the spotlight shines that bright, it often casts deep shadows. The question now isn't whether Justin helped her, but what she had to sacrifice in return. Was it truly mentorship or something more calculated? Something that's been quietly happening in the entertainment industry for decades, where powerful men elevate young girls only to mold them, use them, and keep them close, for reasons that don't always appear on the surface. Madison's journey is far from unique. In fact, it mirrors a disturbing trend in Hollywood where young, beautiful girls are discovered and then absorbed into systems of control, where their images are polished, their voices filtered, and their freedom quietly chipped away. Madison has become a successful artist in her own right, but that doesn't erase what she endured along the way. Her early career wasn't hers alone. It was shaped, guided, and at times overshadowed by someone who had the power to make or break her with a single post. And when the blind items, the media speculation, and the strange silences all line up, it's hard not to wonder what really happened behind closed doors. Because the most haunting question isn't about one moment, it's about the pattern. Did Madison Beer simply survive the system, or was she shaped by it in ways we'll never fully understand? Was her bond with Justin a genuine friendship, or a strategic illusion designed to protect something darker? One thing is clear. Madison's story forces us to take a harder look at how young talent is managed, manipulated, and marketed. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop calling it mentorship, when it looks so much like exploitation.